Fellas, these past 24 hours might have been the most hectic 24 hours we've had in the UFC. A bunch of fights has apparently been added and leaked, and then a bunch of fights have apparently been cancelled. We're going to be going through every fight that has been officially confirmed, as well as a shit ton of rumoured fights. So we've got a big fight. There's apparently going to be replacing Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler, which I'm going to get into in the video, but we'll start off with the fact that was officially announced by the UFC. Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. 5 rounds as the main event for UFC Saudi Arabia. My initial thoughts on this fight is that, does Ikram Aliskerov deserve this fight? He doesn't, but it's short notice, and you know what? I'm not that mad. If this was the fight from the get-go, instead of announcing Chimaev, they announced Ikram Aliskerov versus Whittaker. I can understand the frustration because Ikram Aliskerov has done nothing to deserve a fight with Whittaker, but it's on short notice. The event is literally next week. Chimaev has just pulled out, and you know what? I'm not even mad about Ikram Aliskerov. Even though there's guys that may deserve it above him, it's still another Dagestani fighter headlining in Saudi Arabia, and it's going to be a competitive fight. Like a lot of these people that are saying that, oh, Ikram Aliskerov is trash, well, he's beating trash people and he doesn't deserve it. I still think it's going to be a competitive fight. It's a difficult fight for Whittaker. Ikram Aliskerov's got powerful striking. He's very offensively sound and he's really well-rounded as well. He's got great grappling as well. So it's a difficult fight for Whittaker, but we still get to see Whittaker back in action. I'm glad that the fight night has not been cancelled, especially the main event, because this is still one of the most stacked fight nights of all time, obviously. And that means we're not going to be seeing Ikram Aliskerov in tonight's fight night against Tatsuro Taira and Alex Perez, or tomorrow night's more like. But Ikram Aliskerov's got a new fight. Ikram Aliskerov versus Whittaker. This is a big opportunity for Ikram Aliskerov, because if he can beat Whittaker, he might potentially get a title shot or put into a #1 contender fight, when before his best win was Warley Alves. And it's the same for Whittaker. I'm sure if he's able to beat Ikram Aliskerov, he's going to want a title shot too. So this is the new main event for UFC Saudi Arabia. I'm sure you've heard already, but this is just my personal thoughts. And before we move on to the next matchup, I'm just a bit concerned for Chimaev, man. This guy, it seems like every 3 months, or not 3 months, but 6 to 12 months, we get news that Chimaev is violently ill, whether it be COVID or whatever. Because I remember a few years ago, he took a few years off because of like COVID or something. He might have the worst immune system in the UFC. I hope he gets better, because this guy went from being the first triple champ in the UFC to not even being able to make it to fights because his own immune system is failing him. So I hope Chimaev gets better and sorts out whatever he's got going on. But now it's about Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. And you know what? I've said before that Ikram Aliskerov is one of my favourite prospects in the UFC, and I can't wait to go and watch him get flatlined by Whittaker from the 1-2 head kick. It's going to be fun to see. But enough about that fight. Obviously, the elephant in the room, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler, has reportedly, not officially, but reportedly been cancelled, and it is apparently being rescheduled to August 31st or some other time in September. But August 31st is the day that they're looking to be, so it's still in summer, right at the end of summer. Again, this is the problem. We're getting sources like Ariel Helwani, who is usually fairly trustworthy, and a couple other inside sources that this fight has been cancelled and they're scrambling for other fights to be added to this card, which I'm going to be talking about, because apparently the new main event is now not official, but really heavily rumoured to be on this card. But McGregor and Chandler is apparently cancelled. Chandler's been tweeting about the fact that he and McGregor has never had a cancelled fight. I don't know why. And the UFC is still posting promo, so it's not actually been official that this fight is cancelled, but it's been heavily rumoured by a lot of inside sources that this fight is going to be rescheduled rather than completely cancelled. Well, it is cancelled from this card, but it's going to be rescheduled to August 31st. And this can be detrimental for UFC 303, because initially this wasn't looking like an amazing card, even with the big main event. So now that this fight is taken off it, this card needs some serious, improvements to the card. And we're going to be talking about the core main event, which is apparently in jeopardy too. But as far as McGregor versus Chandler goes, this past week, honestly, it's been a bit on and off. 1 minute we think the fight's on, the next minute we think the fight's off. At this point, I have no clue what's going on, but I am expecting this to get rescheduled to August 31st. Maybe this is just a smart promotional tactic by the UFC, which, if that's true, that's absolutely crazy. But the one problem with this, we talked about this card not being good enough in the first place. Apparently now Jamal Hill versus Carlos Ulberg is also off. Now, the difference between this matchup is I don't know if Jamal Hill is the one, because apparently Jamal Hill is injured, so I don't know if it's a case of it's going to be rescheduled to August 31st, or the fact that Jamal Hill is injured. You know what? This is a matchup that I'm not too surprised one of them got injured. Jamal Hill's literally just got KO'd at UFC 300, and Carlos Ulberg literally just fought a few weeks ago at UFC St. Louis. So they both fought fairly recently. I'm not surprised, one of them has been injured, but apparently this is also going to be the co-main event of the new McGregor card in August 31st, which I'm still excited to see the fight. But again, this means that the current UFC 303 is going to need some serious improvements, because we talked about it being a bit of a bad card. It is going to need some serious improvements, and I've got two fights that are not confirmed but are pretty heavily rumoured to be on UFC 303, the new UFC 303 without McGregor, Chandler and Hill and Ulberg. And if these fights go through, these are pretty big fights that we need to talk about. The first fight, and I'm sure you've heard of this one, Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. This is apparently now being aimed for UFC 303 is a replacement, not for the main event, because we're going to get onto that, but as just another fight on the card. I really like this fight. I think this will be an absolute banger. It's a big opportunity for Diego Lopez as well. To go from Sadiq Youssef though all the way to Brian Ortega is a massive jump. That is a big jump to go from Sadiq Youssef to Brian Ortega. But if Diego Lopez can get it done, that dude has gone from us questioning if he can ever beat a ranked opponent to potentially getting a title fight if he beats Brian Ortega, especially the Ortega that's just beating Yair Rodriguez as well. But if Ortega can beat Diego Lopez, he's beating one of the best prospects in the featherweight division, and I'm sure Ortega's going to be one of the title shot after Holloway. So it's a really fun fight, is this. It's really competitive, but it is a big step up for Diego Lopez. And apparently this is going to be moved to UFC. We'll add it to UFC 303, which again, really good fight. But now we need to talk about the big fight, the main event that is apparently heavily rumoured from inside sources to be as the main event for UFC 303. And it is the rematch between Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka. I always thought that Kevin Holland was the most active fighter in the UFC, but I never expected Alex Pereira to overtake him as the champion. Alex Pereira as a champion has to be one of the most what's the word? Listen, it's 2 a.m. I forgot the word. What is it? One of the most frequently fighting champions in the UFC. Like, this dude is fighting like every 2 months. He is so active. He's already fought at UFC 300 this year. He fought at 295 last year, and now he's going to be apparently facing Yuri for this event this year. If this fight goes through as the main event for UFC 303, this is going to be crazy. It's going to be an extremely fun rematch that I know people are going to be crying about the fact that Ankalaev isn't next. You already know that if Ankalaev got called to fight on short notice against Pereira, he's not taking that. He wants every advantage he can get. But Yuri versus Pereira, obviously I would have preferred it if you had a full training camp. But you know what? If this is the main event for 303 and they had, obviously Evlo Evan Ortega, it's still a bit of a bad card, but you know what? At least we get a big main event and a title fight, and we get to see Poatan back. And that is apparently the big fights that are going to be rumoured for UFC 303 as well as UFC Saudi Arabia. You let me know your thoughts on these matchups, because these past 24 hours have been some of the most confusing hours in MMA history. Like, there's been an announcement here, a rumour here, an inside source leak here. It's just been going crazy. But the only one that's been official so far is Ikram Aliskerov versus Robert Whittaker. So that's going to be taking place next week. And maybe by the time this video's gone out, there's been some new announcements. But let me know your thoughts on these matchups. And thank you for watching.